A few years ago, Herman and Oksana stood hand in hand, making quiet promises to build a life rooted in trust and shared dreams. Herman, a man of relentless drive and vision, was deep in the trenches of entrepreneurship, determined to carve out a name for himself. Oksana, with her graceful composure and artistic soul, had long dreamed of expressing herself through fashion. And thanks to Herman's encouragement, that dream finally found a place to grow. He gifted her a sewing machine and cleared out a room in their home for her to use as her workspace. That space became her sanctuary. Stitch by stitch, she poured her spirit into every garment. What began as personal creations turned into custom requests from friends, then from friends of friends, until she found herself with a steady stream of orders. Herman supported her every step of the way, paying for her to attend sewing workshops and design courses to polish her craft. In those early years, Herman's journey in business was anything but smooth. There were long nights, lost deals, and moments where doubt loomed heavy. But the tide began to turn when Vladimir, a friend from Herman's university days, stepped back into his life. Intrigued by Herman's evolving business model, Vladimir offered his help. What began as casual advice soon blossomed into a strong business collaboration. Over time, Vladimir became Herman's right hand, trusted, relied upon, and praised. Herman often paused to reflect on what he'd built. A thriving company, a loving wife who was now flourishing in her passion, and a peaceful home that echoed laughter and shared routines. One afternoon, while walking back from a meeting, he passed a quaint little jewelry shop tucked away in a quiet lane. He remembered how Oksana always admired unique, handcrafted pieces, ones that carried story. Curious, he stepped inside and asked if they designed custom jewelry. When the answer was yes, he worked with the artisans to create a ring of white gold, shaped like soft ocean waves, studded with delicate gemstones. It was a quiet nod to their first meeting on a windy seashore years ago. When the ring was finally ready, he presented it to Oksana, who was overwhelmed by the thought behind it. She wore it beside her wedding band, the two pieces symbolizing the life they had built together. But months later, after a particularly draining workday, Herman returned home seeking rest and normalcy. As they sat down for dinner, something subtle caught his eye. Oksana's hand looked oddly bare. He frowned slightly. "You're not wearing your ring?" he asked, genuinely puzzled. She paused, then replied with a sheepish smile. "I accidentally scratched it while sewing. I sent it to a workshop for repair." "You could have told me," he said, the corners of his voice stiff with disappointment. "I would have taken it back to the jeweler who made it." She laughed it off gently. "It's nothing serious, just a small fix. I've got it handled." The next morning, while hurrying to the bus stop, his car still sitting at the mechanic's, Herman couldn't shake a nagging feeling. Something about the ring's story didn't quite add up. He tried to dismiss it. After all, Oksana was known for her clumsy moments. Maybe she had truly scratched it by accident. Later that day, already behind schedule for a major meeting, Herman stood on the curb, frustrated that no taxis were available. Just then, he spotted a familiar car parked near the grocery store, Vladimir's. Odd, since Vladimir had called in sick that morning. Intrigued and slightly irritated, Herman walked over just as Vladimir emerged from the store carrying a small paper bag. "I thought you were resting at home," Herman said, eyeing him carefully. Vladimir hesitated for a breath too long before composing himself. "I was feeling better. Just needed a few things." "Right," Herman replied, the suspicion settling deeper. "Well, if you're out and about, can you give me a lift? I'm late." As they drove, Vladimir changed the subject quickly, talking about business expansion and pushing again for their partnership to become legally equal. It was a conversation they'd had before, but always stalled by formalities. Herman half listened, distracted. Something wasn't sitting right. He reached behind to grab a water bottle from the floor mat, and then froze. There it was, her ring, nestled between the seat and the floor mat, the very ring Oksana had said was at the repair shop. His hand tightened around the bottle. The weight of realization crushed him like a collapsing ceiling. Everything began connecting. Vladimir's sudden absences, Oksana's vague explanations, the missing ring. It all pointed in one direction, and it reeked of betrayal. By the time they reached the office, Herman was silent, his mind spiraling. But his next moves were swift. He revoked Vladimir's access to all shared business systems, blocked his credentials, and sent an internal memo terminating his involvement effective immediately. The business, after all, was solely in Herman's name. There was nothing Vladimir could do. That evening, Herman walked into the house with a ring in his pocket and fire in his chest. Oksana met him with a smile, but it faltered the moment she saw his expression. He handed her the ring without a word. The silence between them stretched painfully before he finally spoke. Not with raised volume, but with cutting finality. He laid out everything he knew, every thread of her deception, and every piece of evidence. Her face paled. Her legs seemed to weaken beneath her. She stammered apologies, but he stood firm, unmoved by her tears or pleas. He told her to leave. Tonight, she packed in silence. As she closed the suitcase, she turned to him one last time, hoping for a flicker of forgiveness. There was none. The next morning, Herman arranged for a courier to deliver the rest of her belongings, an act not of cruelty, but of closure. Oksana sought refuge with Vladimir, only to realize their relationship was nothing more than smoke and delusion. Vladimir's business ventures collapsed without Herman's foundation. Desperate to recover, he sank deeper into debt. The charm that once seemed magnetic now revealed itself as desperation. Oksana, now the only one earning, found herself supporting them both. The weight of survival crushed the remnants of affection, and eventually she left. Alone again, she filed for divorce, her dreams disintegrating with each passing month. She reached out to Herman once, long after everything had fallen apart, but he didn't respond. His silence was louder than any answer. Herman never looked back. With the past finally closed, he poured his energy into rebuilding, this time on his terms. Stronger, wiser, alone perhaps, but never broken. And as the seasons passed, he walked forward, leaving behind the ruins of betrayal, and stepping into a future he was ready to own completely.